But it is funny. It's like, that's kind of what we do as home inspectors. Like, that's our job, is to write a report. I mean, I'm weird. I got into home inspection partly because I like writing, and it was, a preferable way to make a living than actually trying to be a writer,
Yeah, and so, and that really is at the root of it. And I think, when we talk about writing a report, we talk about so many aspects of that, whether it's a narrative report or if you're conveying information through writing in a checklist format or ever how whatever medium you use, no matter what, you're going to be known for that medium. You are setting your tone about that reflects on your ability to set your fee, to just a whole host of things. So it's good to see you. Dylan is a Washington State licensed home inspector and is a structural pest inspector, a licensed real estate clock hour inspector. He's
Structure.
Also, what is that? Clock hour inspector?
Yeah, so real estate agents and home inspectors in Washington, to keep your license, you have to do continuing education credit.
Right.
So to be an instructor, you actually have to get licensed to teach adult education, essentially.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
This year, I'm thinking you are the vice president of the ASHI Western Washington?
Yeah, ASHI Western Washington. So it's a great group out here. It's obviously, through ASHI, but our local chapter is really active. We do spring and fall seminars, and they really helped me with my business, especially when I was getting going. It's great. I love doing the continuing education with other inspectors around, because you could hear a plumbing presentation and then talk to some guy that's been doing it for 20 years and kind of get the skinny on how that's relevant to Washington State, the nuance of local information,
And you've been honing your talents in carpentry since your youth.
Well, yeah, I was until I became a home inspector. Now I don't even know which end of the saw to pick up practically. It's been a while. Yeah.
Well, before we get started, tell us about your book, The Confident House Hunter. What was the seed thoughts of that?
Yeah, so I'm sure everyone's been there, but when you're working with a first-time home buyer and you sort of are finishing up the inspection, and I try to, in my inspections, really teach people about houses and create perspective for what it is they're buying, and because without that, it's just a bunch of data that they probably don't understand. And at the end of the inspection, you have clients that say, man, this was so great. I learned all this stuff about houses, but I wish I knew this before I started looking for a house. Right. And you start realizing, like, geez, it's all a bit backwards, especially for first-time home buyers. The first classes they ever get about a house are once they're under contract and they're into it for $600 or whatever for the inspection,
Right.
So that was the idea. And I think we can also probably all agree that, a lot of realtors don't really know how to look at houses. And to get your real estate license, at least in Washington State, you don't have to know a single thing about a house. Right. I mean, and it's particularly the newer agents, I think, are really, they've got one hand tied behind their back because they don't have a resource to teach them, it's just sort of basic concepts about how houses work and where risk and liability is.
Right. That just smells of liability, doesn't it? And an agent has to deal with so many variables and so many different aspects, from title work to inspection stuff that you're talking about today. Yeah.
And they sort of, I think the traditional way you learn is through the school of hard knocks, right? You make mistakes and you sort of learn. And so I was trying to provide a resource there that it was pretty fun, really, if you think about it. Take like all of our knowledge as home inspectors, and I was sort of trying to filter it through the idea of what's the absolute minimum somebody should know to be able to look at a house and kind of just understand, to look past the bling, right? Past the granite counters and stuff. And so, I put things in about looking at roof lines, and sorting houses by age, sorting houses by homeowner, right? You probably get that phone call and there's a certain neighborhood and a certain age of house, and already you're populating a list of all these different things that may or may not be a concern, right? So I think a lot of these things are accessible to laymen. You don't have to be a home inspector.
It certainly is that flavor in my area as well. We have certain subdivisions that are known for either foundation trouble, bad streets, you know, because of when it was built, maybe aluminum wiring,
Yep.
and whole neighborhoods have been created and or challenges for their particular aspect. And I'm sure the Confident House Hunter, which I love the title.
Thanks.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so ScribeWare, how did you, where did that come from? There are hundreds of home inspector software.
Yeah.
Yeah, tell us about ScribeWare.
Yeah, so I actually started the first versions of this back when there weren't hundreds of versions of software, and I remember actually, being trained on, writing a report, handwritten reports,
Right,
and
right.
I remember this one guy showing me how he would, staple Polaroids onto. I mean, it's embarrassing, I'm not that old, but I've been doing it for since 2002 or so, three, right around there, and that's what people were, digital cameras were a new thing, right? So it's amazing to see where it's all come. So I started it because the early versions to me were loaded with all that sort of reams of boilerplate disclaimer, and I really, they never just said the things I wanted to say. So as an inspector, I wanted to communicate clearly. I hated marketing to realtors and stuff. I just didn't like that, right? So I thought if I wrote a really nice, clear report that people would just tell their friends and their business workers, that, and you'd sort of grow your business that way. And really, that's how I grew my business. And I never intended the software to be something I would sell. It was several years ago, my partner, Steve, who's sort of the genius behind the programming, decided that he wanted to, we had a bunch of people using it just because it was simple and easy to use and kind of a professional report. So if we were taking it bigger, we wanted to kind of make it state of the art. So, have all the data stored in the cloud. It kind of pushed us into a whole new platform, so
Right.
that we could handle lots of users and make sure everybody's data was safe and secure. So if your computer dies, you haven't lost
Sure.
everything,
Right.
So some of the advantages in the last few years, particularly with all the cloud computing, is the ability to really have a much more rich, stable platform online. So that was kind of what we've spent the last couple of years doing. And the emphasis for us has always been about the finished product, trying that business model where you grow your business by just a clear, simple report. And
Trying to convey all of the information, the reams, what seems like reams of information that we, as home inspectors, tend to assimilate, and both digital through annotated photos on into just the history with the things that you bring. I mean, you're out there taking a snapshot of the conditions of the property, but you're also conveying that through the report and mixing the years, hopefully, years of experience that you've had. And like you say, some of the stuff is learned by the seat of your pants. But, what you're saying, or I hear you saying, is the report is geared to act upon or showcase that writing style. It is mostly a narrative type reporting
yeah,
tool.
there's no check boxes, at least for the end user. We do what we call, so when I started thinking about it, there are descriptive pull downs that we use. So you might, and these would be things that help make sure we cover the standards of practice, right? So, describing the roof type and, the approximate age of the roof and whether it's a gable roof. So we use pull downs as descriptive. And I think of those, they're designed in the finished report to sort of fade into the background. And they're for the home inspector to kind of help us make sure we're following the SOP.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So that's that's the most that we would sort of concede to the checkbox style. And then the observations are all a report. And the software comes with a very rich library. And one of the challenges we always found with new users is it's hard to search through a really rich library. I mean, there's just so many, right? It's just this deep and all these titles. So Steve actually came up with, we use a keyword search, which is pretty neat. You could start typing in GFCI and all your GFCI observations would come up. You could type in GFCI trip and it would start sorting through. And the algorithm is smart. So the more you use a specific observation, that observation would come up first.
Mm,
So it actually
mm,
kind of learns with you. The more you use a certain thing, it would be like, well, do you want this one? So that's sort of one of the
right.
features that we have that is probably pretty different. Sort of the keyword search library. You can also add titles to things to make it easier to find observations. But that's something that's sped me up a lot, just being able to sift through a
Mm-hmm,
long
mm-hmm,
library and find the
mm-hmm.
one you want. You know.
Sure. Yeah, yeah. And you've got some videos there on your the scribeware.com. Is that right?
Yeah.
Scribeware.com.
GetScribeWare.com. Yep.
GetScribeWare.com on the website. I looked at those videos and noticed that you use some features that are pretty common: the drag and drop photo, ability to drag and drop. I do like the option of when you drag and drop a photo, it places a check mark on it so that you know that that photo is already in the report somewhere.
Yep.
Can you continue to drag and drop that same photo in other areas? Is it
Yep.
repeatable?
Yeah, you can
Yeah.
use the same pictures many times. It only gives you one little check mark, so you know it's in there once. And that's the idea of that was, and it'd be fun to chat about. We could talk about data collection a little bit, because that's sort of a huge part of your report writing is how
Sure.
you're collecting data on site. But I always wanted to have my camera be my primary data collection tool, simply because you can't touch it for speed and just sort of being out of your way. You know, it doesn't get in the way of my process, right? I can have my camera out and just start snapping pictures of all these things. So that's kind of our primary form of data collection, but there's some other ones. And also you can drag and drop videos in as well. And I've been using more and more of those. I don't do long clips typically unless it's something complicated, but they're great for, the heat pump's running and you're out there and it's like, here's a little 5-second video of your heat pump running.
Yeah, yeah. Especially if it has a noise and you can pick the noise up.
Yeah, right. Garage doors making a racket. Yeah,
yeah. Noise is like how noisy that text in a text format that's a little bit noisy. Okay, well, how noisy is noisy? Well, it's like this, and then you.
I love it. Yeah. We still haven't gotten smells down yet. We got to figure out a way to, right?
Yeah.
Boy, the house smells funny today.
Yeah.
Challenge number 3,452. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So when we're talking about home inspection software now, it's kind of hard to say, I've got this inspection software. There must be an app for that.
Yeah, totally.
So
we're actually
you're working on an app.
Yeah, we're developing an app now, and so I've used a bunch of the apps over the years, and one of the things I've always found that I'm trying to avoid, or we're trying to avoid, is that sense of, I always found as soon as I'm in a machine searching for buttons and check marks, I'm not doing my inspection anymore. Really takes me out of that process. And I'm accustomed to sort of often the client is there, wants to know things. And so I don't know if you've experienced that, but I've always found that as soon as I start interacting with a device, I've kind of stopped my inspection, and it can kind of be disorienting way to collect data, and it slows me down a lot on site. So, I mean, this is just a personal thing, but as we're developing our app, the goal is to try to make it as close to just taking pictures as possible, so that it is as unobtrusive into your inspection process. And I think that's really important. I mean, I think one of the things that we do as professionals that's really profound is connecting dots that are dissimilar. I mean, our job is a lot trickier than checking boxes. And I can think of just as an example, a time I was in an old house, and you do the outside and you're in the basement, and I'm looking at the furnace and the water heater, and they're venting into the masonry chimney. And you have that moment where you're like, wait a minute, I don't think I saw a masonry chimney on the outside of the house. Right? I mean, we've all had those moments, and those are hard. I mean, I think, realtors and our clients think that these big problems sort of come with a big neon sign on them, and we just wander around and check boxes and find them. But
those problems are very human-like too, in that no one is perfect and can see all that and categorize all that the same way each time in a robotic fashion. It's just, our attention spans are, based on our diet, the amount of rest we get, how many
Yeah.
inspections we're doing a day. Do we need a vacation? Did
Yeah.
I have an argument with my kids or my wife or whatever? All of that affects,
Absolutely. Yeah.
affects your inspection
Yeah.
process. I think it would really be, trying to stay in that mode of thought there with, you're, hey, wait a minute, app, you're taking me out of my flow here. Wouldn't it be cool to be able to take photos, and as you take the photos, you either voice search for the section that photo should be in, or how would that work?
Yeah. I love it.
Most
Well,
apps go text. I think I'm going to do the outside, and then I'm also going to add a photo, and then I've got to now think about how to add that photo. Maybe if the photo was the primary and text was secondary in the field.
I think this is where our approach is, and I think we're going to go after the app as a data collection device, and I would distinguish that from trying to finish a report on a phone. And these are business models. If you want to finish a report on a phone, go for it. But it's hard to really create and add the nuance, I think, that a lot of us want by finishing a report on the phone. So we're going after taking a picture and being able to tag it with voice recognition, so that, and I'd love to talk a little bit about our idea for complex observations. But to finish this app idea, you could be taking a picture with your phone and say, wood decay noted at the southwest corner. Right. And so now you've tagged that photo with that voice caption, and that would appear as a caption with the picture. And that way, when you're assembling your report, you can drag these pictures in all pre-captioned with very specific data of where you took it and what, lost seal, master bedroom, north wall,
So you would, in essence, sort of, like you said, tag it into a general area of your report software, so that when you open the software, it would at least be in the exterior section or the bathroom section, and not in the kitchen section,
mm-hmm.
or
that's
something
yeah, I mean,
like that.
we're thinking about the degree to which, and it'd be interesting your feedback on this, the more buttons you push to push it into a category on site while you're doing the report, it's sort of the more things you're doing on site, versus, in a way, like when you have all your pictures sitting there right on the right side of your screen and you're just dragging them in, it's pretty darn quick. So it's fascinating. It's sort of, there's could you be faster and more accurate by actually compiling the report at home on an actual machine versus trying to do that on your phone? I mean, and those are,
Right.
I don't know if there's a single answer, but those are the questions we're going after.
Mm-hmm.
One of the cool problems that I wanted to solve with the newest version is, when you're doing, siding, decks, structure, electric is a big one. And, we're electrics, we're talking about one system, but, you're done with the inspection and you have 20 observations, right? I mean, it's just electric, right? And really the logical way that we ought to do this, I think, is sort of, boy, during inspection, I found a lot of problems with your electrical system. You need an electrician, right? So in ScribeWare, we actually have a way where you use a very general statement. So I would use, multiple, defects and red flags are found on the wiring, and a super vague statement, no specifics, that as a standalone observation to me is inadequate, but it's a great general observation. The last bit of text at the end of that general observation is examples of specific observations we found during inspection include : So now you drag all your pictures in and you put captions with them. So, running splice in the basement ceiling,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
overheated wiring at the electric panel, right? I mean, you go on and on, you have 20, 30 things. We can hit one little button and then it makes a bulleted list of all those specific observations right below that general statement. So I'd almost have to see it, but it creates this really clear observation. It's like, boy, you have a lot of stuff wrong with your wiring. Here's, you need an electrician. Here's an example of why you need an electrician. Boom, boom, boom. And
here's a list of it. Yeah, right.
and it's bulleted points. So, and I found that, before, when I would try to put all that detail, I would end up with these like endless paragraphs, right? I found this and the other thing. And it was very hard, I think, for the user to get at all that specific detail. So I really love this combination of just clear, simple, general statements combined with a bulleted list of really specific items. And then you have a picture to follow up each one of those bullets.
Photo or video.
Or a video, absolutely. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I've been finding I've really enjoyed it for, that's not for everything, but for decks, electrical, siding, roofs sometimes, where you find lots of issues with a single system. I think it's a really great way to report on complex observations.
So the software itself, like you mentioned, is a bit of a business model. You are not going for the primarily for the guy who is doing 3 or 4 a day and he's writing them all on job. Although that could be handled
Yeah.
through ScribeWare. It
The,
basically is how much data you want to have in it. Would that
That's
be
right. I
correct?
mean, that's the actual goal, really, is that is that I think it's a very, so one thing is we ship it with virtually no directions. So the interface, the user interface is designed to be as simple and intuitive as possible. And so, we think it's a well suited to beginner inspectors. But, I'm actually working with Charlie Buell now, adding features to try to make it appealing to him. And, he's sort of
Mm-hmm.
Mr. ADD with his reports,
Mm-hmm.
but,
Mm-hmm.
but ideally there's enough richness in there that you could keep going, that you can keep, one way that I keep adding a lot more detail every day is just more hot links to information, which, around here, there's a lot of these Bosch dishwasher recalls. And,
Mm-hmm.
so you find the best little link to where the owner can put in the model and serial number. And now it's a hot link in the report. And now that's built into my library. And the library really serves as a great back end learning tool. I mean, I've got when you find the adhered manufactured stone veneer, installation guidelines. You've probably seen that before, but it's great
Mm-hmm.
having all those hot links in there. And sometimes I'm in my own library just researching stuff because I know I've got the owner's manual for
Mm-hmm.
something or the installation
Mm-hmm.
guidelines. So yeah, and I think to make the reports really clear for everybody, the idea is sequencing the data really well. And the goal of the finished product is that, the busy businessman that's got 5 minutes to figure out whether he wants to buy the house can look at a summary page, look at a few pictures, make a decision. And the retired engineer that wants to spend 12 hours reading the same report could keep going,
Mm-hmm.
and so that, and some of that is about, as an inspector, how much information do you want to put in there? But either way, it should be sequenced clearly enough that you can, there's an inspector that I admire his reports near where I work, but they're very difficult to just find the information you want. It's all buried in this sort of long narrative of stuff. And I think you should be able to hit a button and go to the roof and be like, all right, what's wrong with the roof?
Right,
So
right, right. And that's important for the buyer or your client. Doesn't necessarily have to be a buyer,
that's right.
right? I mean,
Yeah,
I do inspection work for sellers or just for someone who wants to know about the conditions of their property.
that's right. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It's
so
interesting. Well, go ahead.
I was going to say it works with commercial. So you've got a commercial section. I noticed templates that you could
Yeah.
create
So
specific templates.
we've added a lot more customization features to where our templates are actually starting to go away entirely, just because you can you pull up one of our templates. If you've got 20 water heaters, you could have 20 water heater sections. If you've got 20 bathrooms, you could put 20 bathroom
So
chapters.
the way it's written, it enables you to add a water heater. You don't necessarily have to have a template for an apartment complex with 20 water heaters. You have the same template, could be water heater A, B, C, D, and list them that way
Absolutely.
in the
And
water heater section.
even cooler, if you happen to be doing tons of the same one, you could save that template for yourself. You could call it, Gary's commercial template, right? And so you could save the template, or if it's just a
Mhm.
one-off, you could add water heaters, electric panels, sub panels. So yeah, we used to have a lot more. Our older version had a lot more pre-made templates because it wasn't quite as flexible. But with this, you can really add or remove sections or systems ad nauseum. So
Mhm.
it
How long
works.
have you been working on ScribeWare?
Well, my desire to just communicate clearly with my clients started right after I started my business, and I was I tried a lot of different things, and I really wasn't happy. And it itself was just being stupid enough to think, oh, I'll just make my own, which really, not, don't do it if you think you want to. I mean, it's this sort of endless amount of work. But
Yeah, I think that same kind of concepts is Charles Buell has, like you mentioned, he's got his own kind of thing with going on with Excel or whatever he uses,
Yeah.
and he can't find anything that's out there. So I had a conversation with him the other day, and he's talking about, yeah, I'm thinking about Dylan's thing, and at that point, my alertness kind of sharpened, and I'm like, what did you just say? You're actually going to
I know.
lay that thing down and try to go to a different.
It's so funny. I mean, he's managed to coax Excel to do things that humans didn't think possible. I mean, I really can't believe everything he's managed to make that program do. But yeah, I mean, that is our goal, is that it's that flexible and that rich that, someone like Charlie could keep adding features and adding, customize it and tweak it and make it their own thing so that they're delivering that level of information that they want. Another really interesting thing is that there's always the sort of cliche discussion of how long a report should be. But I do, these HTML reports are so cool. They're really interactive reports. And, when you can navigate through a report by clicking the roofing section or the plumbing section, or go to the summary page, or go to the pest inspection, and you have hot links for additional information, this idea of length is really sort of blown out of the water. I mean, it's as long as a reader cares to spend with it, which I think is pretty cool. And that's also just so again, the idea of the tool is that it would be rich enough that Charlie could keep adding his level of detail.
Right.
He's happy,
I think if there was one typical response or typical question Q&A that we have in the big group, we have that big group on Facebook, and with 4,000 and whatever members, just we've got a ton of people in there asking questions and getting good answers and getting help, and it's a good support system. But one of the main things quickly is, how fast can I do the report? How quick can I be? What's the average length time that you're spending on your reports for an average house, and what is an average house across America? I mean, when we're talking broad, we're actually talking around the world, because we got some guys in Australia there in our group. So if you were to try to choose an average time that you could tell the listeners that you spend about 3 or 4 hours on a standard 2,000 square foot home, 2,500 square foot home.
I almost never spend more than 2 hours on a report, and that's a pretty detailed report. It's an efficient system. So, if I did a condo interior, I could finish it on site if I wanted to. I mean, you got to download the pictures and stuff, but I mean, it's quick enough that you can. And
since it's not an app, you're going to be doing most of that work on a laptop.
Yeah,
I use it's a job.
It's PC or Mac compatible, so I just set I used to use a Surface. I've been using a Surface Book recently, but set it up in the kitchen, and I will often just take a little break and sit down and think about it. It's a great way to kind of help your head. I find when I do it that way, it orients me and gets me into the inspection. It doesn't distract me, and it gives me a bunch of things that I want to start chasing down. And that's when I think of my procedure. I try to be, I think we're all trying to be very systematic, right? You go around the exterior one way, you go around the exterior the other way. You have these systems, but I think it's really important to have moments in the procedure where you blow up the linearness of your procedure and you chase down loose ends. And that's what, I love going back to the report for a minute, and you're filling in some things. You're like, all right, I'm going to go chase down the dryer vent. I'm going to go make sure that, I shut the oven off, and I'm going to go turn on the heat and check the red, right? And there's always these moments where you're kind of jumping around the house like a lunatic, because it doesn't fit in the sequence anymore. You got to check down these loose ends. So that's sort of how I like to do it. But I think our sort of tagline is the quickest way to write a great report. And I don't think it's the quickest way to write a report. There's definitely quicker ways to do it. But, I think we're always trying to balance speed and quality. I mean, it's a business decision at the end of the day.
It is a balance. What would the average, what would be the most obvious way the average inspector would bring photos in, taking it on a separate camera or taking it on his smartphone?
Well, once we get the app developed, it would probably be a smartphone, just because I would add the ability to tag the pictures. I've always preferred just digital cameras myself. I like the quality of them and the zoom lenses and things. So that's sort of what I've always used. And then you just download them and you essentially you connect ScribeWare to your My Pictures, wherever your folder is. So, and
Hmm.
the other thing about that is even if you use an app, your phone, I don't know, you're in a crawl space, which you might not want to bring your phone, or you use thermal infrared. I mean, I use thermal camera for a lot of it, for all my stuff. So, almost no matter what, if you're using an infrared camera right there, you're going to be taking in
Pulling a
pictures
chip
from.
out and right.
That's right. Yeah. So and by hook or by crook, you're putting pictures on your computer.
Correct. So you're going to be pulling some type of managing some type of media uh, storage device, whether it's a small chip in your phone or whether you're uploading it, and that's a challenge no matter what.
It really is. It's funny. I think I have one video on our YouTube channel of it, but dealing with pictures and getting them all where you want them is like a challenge in and of itself. And it's not too hard if you're just using one camera or one phone. But I have two infrared cameras. I've got my main camera with like a big zoom lens, and I have my crawl space camera. I suppose that's crazy, but that's just how I like to do it. And I use them all for different, they fit little niches that I really like. We
Mm-hmm.
also support sewer scopes, video sewer inspections. So that's conceivably another medium that you could be importing if you're doing sewer inspections.
Mm-hmm. Into ScribeWare itself. Yeah.
Yeah, we actually
And
serve some of the bigger sewer scope companies in the Seattle market. That's all they do is sewer scopes. But
oh, okay. Yeah. So you do that? Do you perform that task?
I don't, thank God. Yeah, I have no interest in it, but it's a great business out here. It seems like other areas are a bit more price sensitive, but the guys out in Seattle do great. We have old sewer infrastructure, and the city's laws have always been that you're responsible until it meets the city main in the middle of the street, which means you could have the joy of paying to cut open the street
Mm.
to fix your sewer line.
Oh, lovely. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's been a great
Tell
business.
us about how you what happens after the inspection and for long-term storage.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So when you work on your library or your templates, all that stuff is stored in the cloud. Uh, when you're working on a report, you're essentially working in a database. You don't have to be online at all, so you can be totally disconnected. You can totally finish a report. You can even hit the publish button on the report, and as soon as your computer is next connected to the internet, it will basically take the data that you entered and upload it to the cloud and publish an HTML report. And that report, you then send a link with the report. And if you don't like the security of that, because some people have concerns, you can save it as a PDF. And so then you'd send a PDF. And, we really it's just the little things that you spend when you have a software company, but we put a huge amount of time into automatically nailing the size of the images so that when you have a PDF, it's just small enough that you can still email the PDF, yet we wanted the images to be really rich and clear, so that's this beautiful report. So we sort of wanted the images to be as big as we could get away with, but
Right,
still have a
right,
PDF that wasn't so big you couldn't email it.
right.
And
So what
then
do you think the average size of your file is if you were to do
I,
crunch and
it's a
send?
good, yeah. I can't even remember because I'd have to go look.
4 meg, 3 meg,
Yeah.
6?
Well, they're pretty big, but we can email them. I remember that, and I can't remember what the limit is. It's like 10 megs,
Mhm,
I think, might
mhm.
be
So
the
the
biggest.
HTML version is a public facing page. It doesn't require a password in order to have your client access the report.
That's right. Yeah, you just send it
So
to
when
them.
they click the link, they go to the page and are able to read it without encoding some type of password.
Yep,
So whoever has the link has the report.
that's right.
Beware and don't email it to someone you don't want them to have the link, because if they have the link, they're going to have the report.
That's right.
Right.
Which really, it's kind of the same with a PDF, frankly. But if that were to make you nervous, you can, some people have expressed that, and so you
Mm-hmm.
can just send a PDF. It's kind of the same thing in the sense that once a PDF's out in the world, if someone else has it, then
Sure.
they have the report. But
Yeah. Yeah.
It is also, we actually, if you were to update the report, meaning like you published it and then you published it a second time and changed things, we save all the copies of it. And that is an important thing for liability, because in theory, if you were to get into hot water, you could like go back and change your report or something. But
Version 1, version 2.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, but so we save all the versions. Essentially, they're all saved in the cloud.
Fascinating.
Yeah, amazing. Isn't it amazing? I mean, it really is funny. I mean, I haven't been doing this that long, and we started talking about stapling Polaroids onto paper, and now we're like, it's
I
HTML
pulled some old data from my one of my storage drawers here in the office the other day, and it was like I don't know, a 14-year-old report that I had done a bunch of check marks, and I had written most of my notes were written. I carried a clipboard, and I basically printed out a blank sheet of paper with just, fill in the lines, and I just hand wrote, carpet, vinyl, yeah. And then you come back to the office and encode that into some software that I, at the time I was, it didn't have an app. It wasn't on my laptop. I didn't have a laptop. I just, you just do the best you can with what you can. And this industry has really changed. This profession has changed so much.
It has. It's extraordinary. And I would tell the story in The Confident House Hunter, but my parents bought a house, and my dad described his inspection as just some guy with a screwdriver, basically. It was very crude, and there was no any level of detail or report or anything. And so it's great. I think we've come such a long way as a profession, and it's cool. I mean, there's great softwares out there that serve all kinds of different business models and stuff. I love that about our industry.
So describe the home inspector. Describe your client. What do you think your home inspector client would be?
I think
would he be 5-year-old? He's been around. He's gone through a couple of versions of other softwares, or.
Yeah, we've got both. We got a lot of new guys. We got a lot of guys that have come over from pretty much all the different systems. And I mean, the common theme is wanting to communicate clearly with the client, and just the idea of just sort of the software, it liberates you to communicate. I mean, that's what good software should do, is free you up to be you, what I mean? And not sort of get in your way of communicating. And that was always the objective. And I think, again, the report being your marketing, and that's how I grew my business. It's just write a good, clear report, and people will love it.
It is your product, isn't it? I mean, after all, you're hired to communicate conditions, and you better, as a default, you need to be a communicator and be able to convey data to your client.
Absolutely.
That's what you sell. That's the reason you're hired.
Absolutely. And it does multiple things at once. I mean, it's your marketing. So now you're not spending nearly as much time marketing. So you could say, oh, well, I could do a report faster. But if you have to go give out fruit baskets and stuff at real estate offices, then you're spending time. I'd just rather write a better report than do that. And it keeps you out of trouble, and it gives you this sort of image to build on of the professional image. So I really, truly believe that it is the best way to build your business, because it's the product you deliver, and it's what everybody sees. It's what stands after you're gone, and I can think of, I did this one house, and I was coming off the roof, and it turned out I went to college with the guy that was buying the house. I mean, we didn't know this ahead of time. And anyway, I sort of was in touch with him afterwards, and it was this beautiful house, but the roof needed to be replaced, and the master bath was shot. It was grandma's, master bath, and the water heater was old. And he moves in, and the roof leaks, and the master bath leaks, and the water heater fails. And his wife looked at him and was like, "Well, didn't Dylan tell us any of this stuff?" And so he like drives down to his office, and he opens it up, and he's like, "Well, there it is in bright red letters, at the top of the report." And
Buyer
people
beware.
forget. Yeah,
Right.
people
Yeah.
forget what we say. I mean, I know I told him, and he's like, yeah, I know you told me, and and not only do they forget what we say, but the first thing they did was put in a fancy kitchen and do all these things that it's like, well, you should have fixed your roof. I told you to.
Yeah. They put the bling in, like you'd mentioned, the granite. Yeah.
Yeah, right. That's people. They oh yeah, all these things, right? But then the first thing they spend their money on is all the bling, right? So anyway.
Yeah, I think we're going to cut it here. I hear the bell ringing here on
Yeah.
our home inspectors that listen to this podcast primarily, as we mentioned before, often traveling from job to job, and we've been so entertaining. They're sitting there for the extra 15 minutes. Now they're late.
Uh-oh.
Thanks for hanging. Great to visit with you, Dylan. Good luck with ScribeWare. Where can guys that listen in here get in touch with you, and the like?
Yeah, just right through our website. So www.getscribeware.com. You can also go to dylanchalk.com, and that's actually the site that hosts some of the teaching stuff that I do. So I do both realtor and home inspector CE classes. So yeah, I'd love to hear from you. Suggestions, ideas, would love to hear about it.
Email, you give that out? You want to do it through social?
Yeah, you could just Dylan, DYLAN, at getscribeware.com. That'll find me. Yeah.
And you're on all the Facebook, Twitter. You're everywhere.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not everywhere, but Facebook and Twitter. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay, super. Good to speak with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Gary. What a blast. Fun.
Yes, yeah, you bet. And for Gary Smith, In the House podcast. Talk soon.